Hi, everyone. We're now moving on to, the very important topic of education, and more importantly, and more specifically, educating the next generation in tech. And who better to have as a guest to speak about this than Esther, lifelong educator and godmother of Silicon Valley, quote unquote. Hi, Esther. So excited to have you. When I met you in 2019, I knew instantly that we had to have you at the conference one day. And luckily, in 2021, we had that chance. So, yeah, welcome, Esther.
Thank you so much. I'm honored and happy to be here. And I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to your great audience.
Thank you, Esther. So, Esther, let's get this conversation started. Tell us, you have had this lifelong career as an educator. How did you get started? And you were a journalist previously, I would say, right? And has that influenced your education style at all?
Yes, it has influenced quite a bit. So I got started actually very early at the age of 14. I started working for a local newspaper and I was the girl Friday. I did everything to help the guys in the office. And then they realized that I somehow knew how to write. So they decided to train me even more so that I could write for them. This was a weekly newspaper. And I was then allowed to write a column on what was going on at the local high school. And I thought that was really cool. And then I went from there to writing a column in a larger publication in Los Angeles Times. And it was also the same column. But then I went to school at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, where I got a degree in political science, English, and journalism. And then I wanted to go out in the world and work as a journalist. And this was in the 1970s, late 60s, 70s. And it turns out that it was okay if I wrote a column about being a teenager in high school, but they did not want me to write about news or opinion. They said the only section I could write for was what was called the women's section. And the women's section focused on children and cleaning and how to take care of your husband. And I said, but I want to write news. I want to write features. I want to write about what's going on in the world. So they said, no. The only newspapers that actually wanted me were local newspapers that came out maybe once a week. So instead, I decided I would teach journalism. I would teach what I knew to all these young journalists. And that's how I started as a teacher of journalism. And it was really exciting because when I first came, there were only 20 kids in the program. And then by the next year, I think the word got out that this teacher is pretty nice and she seems to know what she's doing. And so the program doubled in size and it kept growing and growing and growing. So that's how I ended up being a teacher of journalism. And of course, today I'm a journalist because it's okay for women to be journalists today. But it shows how far we've come. Because just looking back, 1960s and 70s, we might think that that was revolutionary time. But women were not, I was not allowed in the San Francisco Press Club because I was a woman. And it wasn't just me, it was all women. And so things have changed a lot. And I think my daughters saw me as somebody that didn't take no for an answer, and I didn't. I thought, well, I'll teach all these kids how to be good journalists, and they can amplify my message. And so that's how I got started teaching journalism and working with hundreds, maybe thousands of students. And then, of course, in that time period, in the late 60s, early 70s, within a 4.5 year period, I had 3 children. So
Yeah.
I was very, very busy on the production front. And
Yeah.
and they were all girls, as we all know. And so I wanted to make sure that they had all the opportunities that perhaps women didn't have. And so that was one of my goals for them to be able to do what they wanted to do in the world, regardless of gender.
And of course, that program that I just mentioned, it's now world known and award winning, right, at Palo Alto High School. But circling back, you just mentioned your daughter, and speaking of your daughters, you have certainly raised three incredibly successful children, right? And to be honest, that's a completely understatement, I would say. Susan, CEO of YouTube; Janet, professor at UC San Francisco; and Anne, of course, co-founder of 23andMe. So tell us, you mentioned that you wanted them to have everything, but how did you raise them to become who they were, how successful they were, right now? And, actually, is that how you ended up being hailed the godmother of Silicon Valley?
So what I did was that I think there weren't any parenting books out at the time that I really liked. The only parenting book that I used was called Dr. Spock, and it was primarily medical information, what to do if your child was coughing or whatever. But there weren't any books that I found on raising children that were going to be really successful. So my only goal when they were really little was for them to be really independent, capable of doing what they wanted to do. And so I focused on independence and on being able to take care of themselves. And so I started early, and somebody said this might have had a big impact. I taught them all how to swim very early. I mean, the earliest one, Janet was the earliest. Susan was already 18 months old, but Janet was only 12 months old, and she learned to swim. They all learned to swim by the age of 2. And by the age of 5, they were all on a competitive swim team. And my goal was really, you need to be able to make sure that if you fall in a pool, you don't drown. It was just a really simple goal. Then also, I wanted them to be able to recognize where they were on the street. So I pointed out signs like, they would see the name of this street, and this is the signs, and this is what the letters are. So I taught them the letters, and Sesame Street also taught them the letters. And together with that, they sort of put 2 and 2 together, and they started to read just a little bit before school, but they were then ready. By the time school started, they became very good readers early on. So it was really my goal to make them feel and be independent. Because sometimes you see children with parents and they're sort of clinging to the parent. They won't let the parent go. And my kids never did that. They always felt like they could handle the situation. They might have been a little too much out there, actually, but I always thought it was better for them to feel more capable than it was for them to feel incapable. And so that's part of why I did that. I think that had a huge impact on them, because by the time they were 5 years old, they were really pretty confident little girls. And it was interesting. I watched that ad that was played just before.
Yeah,
It was
very relevant.
a great ad. And so I think I modeled very independent behavior for them. Of course, I did all the things mothers do, cook and clean and take care of them and so forth. But I also modeled going out into the community and being part of the community and speaking up when I thought things should be a different way. And also, I was still, even though I was not a professional journalist at the time, I was still doing writing. I was a ghostwriter for a lot of journalists, a lot of professors. And if you don't know what a ghostwriter is someone who writes the story or writes the paper for somebody else. You get paid, but your name is not on it. And so I did do a lot of that. For me, it was exciting. I couldn't do it, I wasn't a professor at the time. I couldn't do it as a professor. And as I told you, there was a lot of discrimination in journalism. So, well, if they want me to do the work and then want somebody else's name on it, okay. But I worked to change that around so that women could be in journalism and women could be recognized. And of course, today we have many women journalists, and I'm really thrilled about that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you were a role model to your children. I think that's a huge part of that, right? Aside from what you just mentioned. And of course, after your successful experience, you wrote a book, the best-selling book, How to Raise Successful People. And can you tell us like the key takeaways from this, right? I think you previewed a little bit earlier already, but what's the key takeaway from the book that you can share with us?
So the key takeaway, my goal with this book is to help all parents be as successful as possible. That's my goal. And for children to be happy and successful. And so what I did with the book is I put an acronym in the book, an acronym meaning just a word to help you remember, because I've read a lot of books, just like you probably have. And then you read it, and then like a month later, you can't remember. It's like, God, what was the title of that book or what? So I wanted this to stick. I wanted people to remember. And so I created an acronym called TRICK. It's like a trick to remember, TRICK, trick. No matter what language you speak, it's easy to remember that one word. And it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And I say in all parenting relationships, in all teacher-student relationships, in fact, in all human relationships, there should be trust between the parent and the child. Respect their ideas, no matter how little they are. They demand that you should respect them because then they respect themselves. Independence, give them as much independence as possible without letting them hurt themselves. Collaborate with them instead of dictating. And most parents dictate. They're like, you're going to do it going to bed at 8:00, and I'm telling you, you're going to bed at 8:00. Collaborate with them and then treat them with kindness. And so this is just to give you an opportunity to think, how are you treating your child? This is probably the most important person in your life. And you want them to grow up and have a lot of self-respect, self-love. You want them to be independent, and you want them to be kind people. People learn kindness when they're treated with kindness. That's how they learn how to do it. And so that's why I created in my book, that's the core of the book. It's organized around that. I give a lot of stories, crazy stories that went on in my life, crazy stories that went on in my classroom. And then I show you the research that supports it. And I didn't actually look up the research first. It was kind of interesting. I just wrote the book talking about what I did and why it worked. And then the documentation was put in later on just to document so you understand. And it's been very successful, not just for parents. And a lot of parents that I know, it's of course successful for my own children, but it's successful for the thousands of kids that went through my class. Thousands. And some of them are very well known in the journalism world. I have multiple students who are on The Economist magazine, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, even in magazines and newspapers around the world. So it makes me very excited to see that. But also I have students who pursued other careers, because you don't necessarily need to be a journalist. Doctors, lawyers. I have a famous movie star, James Franco, who was in my class. A famous athlete, Jeremy Lin, the basketball player. There's a lot of them. A lot of my students are also went to China. I guess they thought it was exciting, and they're part of Alibaba. So whatever they want to do, I like to support them and teach them that they can do it as long as they pursue hard work. It's grit and belief in yourself, believing in your ideas. And if you make a mistake, then what you do is you forgive yourself first. Forgive yourself, because people actually, they get mad at themselves and they don't even realize that they're mad at themselves. And then that really makes it's very difficult then to recover if you're mad at yourself and you don't even know you are.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize the time. Apparently, we only have 10 minutes left. We can keep this conversation going, I feel like. But, I think, maybe we can dive into tech a little bit, right? You obviously have a lot of outstanding students in this field as well, and you yourself quite active in this field. So in your view, how can tech be meaningfully used in education?
So I was one of the first teachers in California, maybe in the country, to integrate technology into my classroom. I think tech supports teachers. I mean, kids learn so much from tech. And so tech is this is the century of tech. 21st century is a century of tech. And I mean, just let's look around the world. What's going on now? Metaverse, right? And all these digital, everything digital. And women are just as talented at tech as men. And somehow or other, the message has not necessarily gotten across. And it should, that you can, just like I do now, I work in tech every day from home. And I learned all of this on my own. And some of them, some of the classes I've taken online. I mean, you can take so many classes online. There's no reason why women cannot be good at tech. And so, of course, my daughters are, two of them are in tech. Well, the third one is also doing tech stuff as well. But they did not major in anything technical, but they felt empowered enough and believing in themselves enough. And they were excited about the frontier in technology. And they said, I'm going to do it. And, all women, you just need to believe in yourself. You can do it. It's not that hard. There's so many asynchronous courses online for you to teach yourself. And they don't cost very much. Some of them cost $35, but that's not very much. Or there's a lot of them that are free. And so the students in my class, by the way, the program grew to be from 20 students in 1984 to the largest media program in the United States, which between 700 and 800 students every year. And
Wow.
the majority of those are girls. So it's really important for us to make sure that we encourage our young women to do things in tech. That is the main thing the world is going to need in this century. I can tell you, here's a statistic for all of us to think about. By 2030, we today don't know 85% of the jobs that are going to be available in 2030. So, and they're all technical. So we need to pay attention and give students an opportunity to work in these technical fields. So
And
hopefully I answered your question. I get all excited and carried away.
no, I think you kind of transitioned as well into this conversation. I was gonna ask, right? You speaking about giving people opportunity and teaching people about technology. I know that you are currently also your own startup founder, and you started this venture called Tract.app, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that and your mission with this platform?
So yeah, let me tell you a little bit about Tract.app. So, and when the pandemic started, I decided that I would retire. It was 40 years in the classroom, and I thought, maybe the pandemic is going to give me an opportunity to do something else, which is true. And so I retired in June of 2020, and a lot of my students actually wanted to be part of this company that we started, but there's one that his name is Ari Memar. He was a student. He graduated 2006. He decided he wanted to work with me on revolutionizing education. And so he became the CEO. And then there were quite a few of my other students who wanted to be part of the original startup team. And the goal is to give kids more joy in the classroom, joy in the classroom. So what this is, these are learning experiences for kids age 8 to 14. That's the target age. So middle school, created by teenagers age 15 to 20. And I can tell you, there's no one more exciting for a younger kid than a kid that is just a little bit older. And if they're creating learning for younger kids, all the younger kids want to do it. And so what's in it for the older kids? What's in it is that it's a leadership opportunity. You develop a lot of leadership skills, and we have a team of people that are headed by this guy that just graduated from Harvard. And we train you how to be a really effective creator. Beginning and intermediate peak kids, they get training. And when you're advanced, you get paid. So you don't get paid a lot, but you get some pretty good, you can get like $15, $20 an hour. And the goal is to empower teenagers, to give them an opportunity to make a difference in the world, and to give kids age 8 to 14 an opportunity to learn things that are exciting. And so that's what we're doing. And I have this special just for this group, and it is, you can get it for free for a year. And all you have to do is type in the code She Loves Tech, and you get it for free. So you just go online, type it in, and that's it. No questions asked. And my goal is to empower all kids worldwide. Right now it's in English only. I'm hoping it will be next in Spanish and in Chinese. Those are my two next target languages. But it's a good way to practice your English too. So if you are not a native speaker, you can still do it. So that's what I'm trying to do with Tract, is to recreate this community that I built in my classroom where kids felt like they could accomplish anything, empower them, give them an opportunity to feel good about themselves. And the way I taught in the class is, if they wrote an article and it wasn't good, all they had to do was to revise. No grade, no bad feelings, just revise. You can do it. And I'll tell you, they all did it. I never had a kid that was not able to do it. So
yeah, I mean, you're definitely, I think, one of those teachers that we all have in our lives, that one or two that really impact the trajectory of our lives, right? So I'm sure this new platform is also equally exciting for a lot of people who's joining it. But actually, as a parting question, we have one question from the live audience, right? So people are asking, about your thoughts about early exposure to technology for kids. Is there such a thing as too young, especially with your platform, actually, because you are targeting fairly young students, fairly young children. So what are your thoughts about that?
So I'm targeting 8-year-olds. I don't think that babies should have a cell phone or an iPad. I think that they need to interact with the world. They need to explore the world. They need to learn to get along. So I think that's too young. I would say that the earliest kids should actually do something online is age 5. And World Health Organization also, fortunately, we agree with each other. And they think that age 5 is okay as well. I see kids that become addicted, and I think that's bad. I don't think that it's a good idea to come home from school and then be addicted and go to some kind of a training program or something. Kids need to go outside and play with each other, or they can do it a little bit with Tract.app. They can do an hour, and it's gamified learning. It actually teaches you something. It's not just a game. It's tied to the US Common Core state standards. Every single thing in that teaches you something, even though it looks like it's just fun and games. In fact, it's more than fun and games. And so, but I don't think that it's a good idea for kids to spend 4 hours after school being trained for some kind of a test that they might be taking. I'm not in favor of that. I'm sorry, but this I think works.
Yeah. So in moderation, everything in
In
moderation, as
moderation.
always.
Yeah, don't eat too much cake either.
Yeah, yes, definitely. We need to moderate our sugar levels. And that's it. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today's panel. Thank you so much, Esther, for joining us. And again, to all the audience out there, Esther is offering us a free code to Tract.app. So just type She Loves Tech and you'll get access to this. Parents, students, and teachers, just get on it and use this free code that we have just shown you guys on the screen.
Right.
Thank you again, Esther. Thank you for joining us. And this was a very interesting conversation that I hope can go on forever. But unfortunately, this is it. So thank you again. Bye.
Bye.